Welcome to Check In with Jason Lortzen, where we explore how to create human, connected workplaces that employees love and that fuel organizational success. Each week, I invite someone who is leading the way in this work to join me for a conversation to help educate and inspire us. This week, I'm joined by Mike Ferone. Mike is the Vice President of Organizational Development and Performance Excellence for Benchmark Gensuite. He leads an organization called Global Functional Services, which includes global human resources, global business operations, and global location management. So he's got a very full plate. Mike, thanks for joining me. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it, Jason.
Now, you and I met at the USA Today Top Workplaces Awards event. I think that's what they called it, the headline banner, out in Las Vegas, where I was there to speak. You were there to pick up some hardware as a Top Workplace winner. I thought it was an exceptionally cool event. Now, I might be biased because I was part of the event, obviously. They hired me to be a little piece of it, but really interesting event, really cool people. I thought the awards part of it, the awards gala in the evening was over the top cool.
Indeed.
I'm curious, what for you was the highlight of that experience? Was it your first time, I guess, to that event? And if so, what was the highlight for you, or what were the highlights?
Sure. It was our first time winning the award nationally. We won it in the Cincinnati area before, which is where we're based. And I love the fact that it was a mix of, it wasn't just all HR people. There was heads of marketing, there were CEOs there. There was a nice diverse group of business leaders in the audience to connect with and mingle with. You were more than a small part, Jason. Your keynote talk and really resonated with me. I think a lot of people were talking about it between breaks. The Duncan Wardle part about innovation was amazing. So really high quality speakers at this event. I think it was the right mix of sitting and listening and learning from the center, and then also having breakout sessions to go deeper. So I agree with you. It was well put together, well run, and yes, receiving the award in the style which we received it at the nightclub with the loud music was something else.
Yeah. It was really well produced. Those USA Today people know how to put on a show. I will say that for sure, and highly recommend if for anybody that is listening, that if you participate in the Top Workplaces program and you qualify and get an invite to this event, it is worth the trip. I mean, just for the networking and the connection, but obviously everything else, I think, really well done. So, and I got to meet you. You and I, our paths crossed. We got to participate in a little like improv session together, and then here we are suddenly having this conversation. So thank you for saying yes. And I want to start today by getting to know a little bit more about you and your organization, just to kind of set the context and get familiar. So let's check in with you a little bit. And let's start with, I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more about your organization and your role within the organization to kind of set a foundation for us, if you would, please.
Sure. We are a software as a service company based in Cincinnati, and we are in the EHS space, environmental health and safety, and sustainability, which kind of falls under the environmental piece as well. And so we are like an ERP platform for health and safety leaders at a lot of large companies. Our product is well suited for large corporations. We have middle market and some smaller ones as well, but it's a sophisticated platform. About 600 employees globally. We have big presence in the U.S., based in Cincinnati, big presence in Aguascalientes, Mexico, and big presence in Bangalore, India, as well as Shanghai, China. We're in 12 countries overall, but our big presence is U.S., Mexico, and India. That was the bulk of the headcount. We were born out of GE. This was a software that was created at GE by our CEO and founder, and that is like an internal tool used for GE that eventually got spun out and became a separate company. GE is still a huge client, as you'd imagine, but we sell to many other customers as well.
Hmm. And tell me about your role. It sounds like you have, at least as I understand it, Mike, you have kind of what we would traditionally refer to as kind of the HR spectrum of responsibilities,
Sure.
plus some other stuff. So tell me a little bit about your role
Sure.
and what you do.
Right. So I'll lead the organization, as you said earlier, Global Functional Services. Global Human Resources is the biggest component of that. But we went through a significant org transformation. We're still going through the transformation, but organizational structure wise, the end of last year, the beginning of this year. And I've been through many in my career. And this is one of the bigger ones that I've worked on and been a part of and has impacted me. And so through that reorganization, I picked up two other organizations, Global Business Operations, which think of that as a process organization where we have team members there that do a lot of not necessarily repetitive tasks, but a little bit easier tasks, almost like outsourced to this group to get this work done efficiently with high quality. And then Global Location Operations is really a kind of a broad spectrum of making sure anywhere from the real estate, the lease, the practical parts of having a physical presence somewhere, all the way through internal events, team engagement, making sure the office is safe and clean, and it's a place. So that's kind of when you think about employee experience and employee engagement, there's a bazillion things that impact that, but certainly the quality of your workspace is one of them. So that was sort of the connection with the HR work that I was doing as well. So I have a good sized team and I have a number of direct reports that work for me directly from Mexico and from India as well. So it's a very global company, organically global, and my role is very global as well, which is exciting.
Mm. So I am always curious about people's origin stories, and particularly I'm curious about how leaders end up in the world of or the work of human resources, because so often so many different ways that we end up doing this work. So I'm curious for you, how did you find your way to this work?
Kind of a funny story. I'll try to get through it with a little alacrity here, but it starts with, I think, being a middle child. I was well suited, I think, temperament wise. And so I didn't know that, but I think that's had something to do with it. Was a business major in Chapel Hill with absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. And I like to say I ended up in HR as part of an administrative error by the recruiting team at Bank of America. So I was interviewing on campus and I was selected for two different training programs. Bank of America is a big recruiter there. And I learned later you weren't supposed to get on multiple schedules. The recruiter's supposed to compare notes and only. So my very first interview on campus in person was with this one division of Bank of America, consumer banking, and I completely bombed it, just terrible. And I knew about halfway through, I felt so bad for the guy. I almost wanted to end it for his sake as much as mine and just say, I realized this is not working. So I had another interview with a technology and operations training program later that same day in the same campus placement office, just a couple doors down. So I used the 4 hours in between to just regroup and think about basically going into doing the opposite of what I did earlier. So I had a great interview with that that recruiter. And so sure enough, within a week, I get a reject letter from one part of the company saying sorry. And I get an invite back to the headquarters letter from another part of the company saying, we'd love for you to come interview with us. So I go to Charlotte, I interview. I keep thinking they're going to figure out they've already turned me down. Like somewhere along the line, someone's going to stop the interview process and say, I'm sorry, Mike, we've already rejected you. But it didn't happen. But I just went in, I think, pretty carefree, I guess, and just like whatever happens, I was very relaxed. So that translated into apparently a great interview day. They made me an offer at the end of the day, which they said they almost never did. And so that set the tone. So anyway, I joined the company in that program. And the reason I share that story is because about 8 months in, I got a tap on the shoulder from HR. Actually thought I was maybe getting fired. They didn't say why they wanted to talk to me. And they said, hey, we'd love for you to be the college recruiter for this program that you're in. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I'm only 8 months in. I mean, it was a year program and I was only 8 months. And they said, no, we know, but we remember how great of an interview day you had and your manager says you're doing a job. And we like to have, people recently graduated serving as campus recruiters. So I said, that sounds like a lot of fun. So I moved over to HR, became the campus recruiter for that program. So much fun going back to Chapel Hill the very next year on campus and seeing all these friends of mine that were now seniors and kind of running the show. They couldn't believe what happened in just, 12 months. But I share that story because that put me on the HR path. I don't know if I would have found it otherwise. Maybe I would have figured it out some way, but that sort of set me up. And then I did that for a couple of years and then went on to become an HR business partner. And that sort of set me on that whole track that way. So I did. Had I not got selected for both interview schedules, I'm not sure I'd be here today.
That is fantastic. And I'm struck by how often in these stories we end up in HR kind of accidentally. And the path is often recruiting. Recruiting is an interesting feeding path, but so many of us ended up kind of accidentally in this work and then kind of fall in love with it once you're there. You realize like, oh, this is amazing. I like people. I like, helping people elevate or helping people work better together or whatever, or you're a systems thinker, whatever it is. But that's cool. Thank you for sharing the story. I love the story. I love the origin story there. That's so fun. Well, and as you're talking too, I'm thinking, I've always thought that it's so interesting, even yet to this day, the way that we go about selecting people. I was
100%.
just talking with someone the other day. It's actually some of the leadership folks at a nonprofit where I sit on the board, and they had asked for some thoughts about hiring process, and they were describing to me that, and they're like have an exceptional workplace and whatever, but like they're telling me about how they're interviewing for some frontline kind of role. And like one of the steps in the process is this person has to come in and does an interview with like literally almost the entire office staff. And I'm like, that sounds terrifying. Like, can you imagine someone early in career, especially someone who might be an introvert, that I'm like, the hardest interview that you ever do is sitting in a room with like 8 people staring back at you. It's just paralyzing. So I've always thought it's so strange that we put so much weight on a 30-minute conversation where someone is terrified and doesn't, maybe doesn't have the skills or maybe isn't, wired for that. And it may not have anything to do with what the skills are they actually do. But that's a great way how it turned out well for you, is like take the pressure off and then all of a sudden you can do a great interview.
I think there was a lot to that. And I thought about that too. The fact that I interviewed well doesn't necessarily translate into I would be a good interviewer, but it's very often, and I think less so nowadays, but certainly earlier in my career, a lot of anecdotal management, like data points around, whether someone was qualified for this or that based on very flimsy data points. And I've benefited from that as well. But I'll actually tie what you said about the decision making after a 30-minute interview to a little bit about what I'm going to talk about when we talk about our culture of opportunity here.
Cool.
There's a connection there.
Well, before we get there, one more question for you, and that is just, what is it that you love most about this work that you now get to do, right? We're farther down the journey. You've been at this for a while. You're at a very cool company. What is it that you love the most about your work?
I'd say a couple things, Jason. I love this company and I love what we do. I mean, we are literally making workplaces safer and making the environment, cleaner and more sustainable. And that is such a high calling, and our basically our motto is your mission, our purpose. We are very, very aligned to our customers in an extremely collaborative way. And I think a lot of companies say that, but it is I've worked at a few places now. It's very different. So I love working for a company that's literally making the world better in a incredibly collaborative way with its customers, which we call subscribers. And I love growth. We're on a high growth trajectory. We took a private equity investment and minority investment 2023. We're on a mission to grow, and that's probably mostly what I love about my work is helping individuals grow, like just watching them grow and flourish through the right cultivating, to use the term from your book, and then how that translates into corporate growth. So I'm very motivated by that, and I love helping people succeed, which helps organizations succeed. And then in this case, an organization that's got such a strong purpose in the world. So there's a lot to love about it, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of the things that's always so cool about like growing companies is because it like growth creates opportunity. And I think that brings us right into the thing that we wanted to talk about today in terms of highlighting some of your great work and some of the things that are happening there internally. And that is, when we first were connecting about you coming on the podcast, I asked you, I think, why you think your employees, sort of their engagement, right? The level of engagement that they demonstrated in the survey process for top workplaces, why it came out as a top workplace. How is it you ended up on this list? And you said, well, I think a lot of it's due to our opportunity culture or culture of opportunity. And so Let's dig into that. First off,
Sure.
what is it? What is a culture of opportunity, Mike?
That's right. And we don't even necessarily label it or brand it that way. That's just sort of my way of
Hmm.
translating. I've been at the company, it'll be 1 year tomorrow. And so I do not take credit for this. This is, I'm along for the ride right now, and I think I'm starting to make a difference and influence some things. But a lot of this was in place when I got here. And so I think it comes from a couple of places. But the the first one is just from a very basic, and this ties in a little bit to your position and point of view on how performance management processes are broken and we need to do them differently in general. That is, we don't have an annual review. Your review cycle itself is based on your hire date, and then depending on your level, it's a certain amount of months after that. So it could be a year, could be 18 months. And then we might promote you before that because you're doing great work and we see it. So we're not rigid. I think that's a big part of it. We can be fluid and rigid. So as a leader, as a manager of people, you're not going to have to do 8 year-end reviews in December or January. You don't have that building up in your head, and the team member doesn't. So the flip side of that is, as a leader, you may be doing them all throughout the year. If you have 6 or 7 direct reports and all of their reviews happen to be this year, but it could be spread out through different months, but you get to focus. Usually you're kind of only doing one at a time. And I've seen the quality of the sort of the write-ups and the proposals are very thoughtful. And I think it's just sort of a byproduct of the fact that you're not trying to rush through 8 year in reviews at the same time and try to get them done as a part of it. But we will, what I've noticed culturally is that first of all, we don't care how old you are. Like, if you're demonstrating the competencies and the skills and you've got the right teamwork behaviors, we will promote you. We'll put you in a bigger job. And then something might change. And 8 months later, we realize, what, we're going to step you up again. And so that's not necessarily the norm for everybody, but it is a norm for it's a lot of people that are that kind of faster promotion. So we've created this, in some ways, expectation that you do good work and we get to know you and you demonstrate good teamwork behaviors because we care greatly about that as well. You're going to get swept along. And to what you said earlier, I mean, we are a growing company, and so it's harder to do if you're not. Honestly, there's a lot of roadblocks in that case. So that's the sort of that's for the timeline. That's part of it, Jason. And the other part is, and I was at an executive breakfast at the USA Today, Best Place to Work event for heads of HR. I think it was kind of heads of marketing, and we had roundtable discussions, and we were kind of comparing notes. And when I started to talk about this, it was the only thing that I saw everyone get their notepads out and write down. And I didn't necessarily think it was like that profound or that different, but their reaction to me talking about this made me think, okay, this is different. And that is when we promote you with the expectation of the expanded portfolio of your work. It may sound like, well, of course, that's what happens when you're promoted. But there's a lot of places where you kind of do the bigger job for a while. And then and you sort of like, okay, Jason's proven himself that he can handle this level. Let's give him the title now. And I'm not saying that's this case everywhere, but in this case, we are so clear on what our expectations are. And we literally, even the manager sends out the announcement email to not the whole company, but whatever the right ecosystem is. HR gets copied on them all, so I get to read them all. And we say right there, Jason in his new role, his expanded portfolio will include doing this and influencing that. And we put it out in bright lights for everybody to see. Then we do a 90-day check-in, and it's with your direct lead manager, their manager, and then your HR partner. So within 90 days, we're going to kind of check in and see how it's going and how are you doing in this new expanded role. So that creates a huge amount of accountability, knowing you have to do that. It also creates accountability for that person's manager, knowing that their manager is going to be on this call as well, to demonstrate that we're living into what we've said that this person is going to be doing. So it's just very transparent, out there in the open. There's this 90-day accountability check-in, and it works. And it took me a little while to get used to, like, okay, what's happening here? And what are all these 90-day meetings? And also we do check-ins with new hires as well. So it's almost like a new hire check-in, like you've been promoted, like you're in a new role. And there's two kinds of promotions, right? There's promotions in the seat, like I picked up expanded responsibilities through this, org transformation, basically in the same seat versus, so and so got promoted or so and so left, and Jason, we needed to go take their job. Those are two different kinds of promotions, but particularly the ones that are the grow in your seat where you've been cultivated and you're now going to take on more work. I just love the accountability and transparency it creates, and and people now. I think that's a big draw for us, honestly.
Sure. So so many thoughts and questions in terms of thinking about I'm curious about the mechanics of this, because oftentimes, I know a lot of times you sit at these round tables and you hear somebody talk about it, and then you get back and all of a sudden all of the traditional kind of compliance concerns or process issues get in the way. Where I'd like to start is maybe first with what does the process look like to identify and approve people for promotion? Because I think that's often where things get hung up, right? Is there's, somebody's doing the work, but unless you have the right advocate or you happen to have the right HR partner, you just are stuck until you do your time. And then you feel,
Right.
and that doesn't sound like what happens for you, but so what does that process actually look
Sure.
like? How would that unfold?
It unfolds. So we keep track of your next review date right there in our HR platform system. We use Bamboo HR globally as our HR sort of main data. And so the lead manager, the person, will get a notification the month before the review is due. And we have a template, and it's got basic information about the person's name, rank, serial number, last date
Sure.
of, last date, the size of their last increase, title, all that kind of stuff. So that's the trigger, is that they'll receive it, and that comes from their HR partner, that they have a review due in the next month.
Sure.
And then we have a template for how it comes back, like where the manager puts in how the team member's doing. We prefer the word team member over employee. So how the team member's doing, what their growth opportunities are. We do use a rating scale, but we don't really share it with the team member. It's really that we use a rating scale for sizing up kind of, is this person ready for promotion? How are they doing it? And we do a separate rating like a lot of companies do on the what versus the how. So it's like a results rating, and then there's a teamwork behaviors rating. And then with that comes the recommendation for either promotion or not promotion, expanded role or not, size of the increase based on some, comp range guidance and data from the HR team. But one of the cool things about this, again, there's a lot of transparency on that. So when that lead manager is making their recommendation for their person, it's coming back. All the HR partners see it. The leaders see it, and it's approved by senior leadership. So there's we're a large company in 600, but we're also a small company at 600. Like, we're still small enough where we can have that level of clarity and transparency at the more senior levels. We might, as we grow, we might have to shift like who's actually making the final call and maybe push that down a little bit. But right now, so if you're the lead manager and you're recommending Jason for increase and a promotion, there's going to be easily 7, 8, 10 eyes on this email. So you want to be thoughtful in what you're saying in terms of how Jason's doing, where his growth opportunities are, and your recommendation. And then what I've seen is fair amount of back and forth. Like, there'd be a question like, well, what about this? Or, this seems incongruent. You listed all these things this person needs to get better at, and some of those seem kind of significant, but yet you've given them a really high rating. Like, that doesn't jive. Like, so it's not just a rubber stamp at all. You'll get pushback, and then there's, through that collaboration and back and forth, we end up at the right answer. So that's the mechanics of how it works.
And that sounds like that's kind of the formal process. You also made it sound like there are times when someone might get promoted between process,
Right.
where with someone, is that usually happening because someone is recognizing their promotion or their sort of their impact and their performance and then sort of raising them up for promotion? Is it the manager? Like, how
Sure.
do you do that out of cycle, or what does that look like out of cycle?
It could come from a couple of those routes. One would be the manager doing exactly that. Just like, you know what, you know, you know, Nikita's doing a fantastic job. She's just killing it actually. And her review's not for another 6, 7 months, but she's really doing the next level job anyway because she's just that good. We should proactively promote her. So it could come from a manager recommendation, just feeling the awesomeness of this team member and the work they're doing, and how well they're performing. The other way would typically be through some sort of org change, but like we're moving some stuff around, we're creating some new roles, and we're like, you know, Brenda would be fantastic for this bigger role in this reorg. Gosh, we just promoted Brenda, 5, 6 months ago. Well, she's still killing it, and we think she could do this bigger job. Let's just go ahead and promote her again. So it's either going to come through some organizational change where there's the need for the person to do a different role or a bigger role, or just that recommendation from the person's lead manager that this person's doing so well, we really don't want to wait the full cycle. And sometimes we still wait and we say, no, we hear you, but this doesn't quite seem like it hits the threshold, which is kind of subjective, but just of an early promotion. But let's make sure we recognize her well, on her actual date. So it's again, there's decent amount of back and forth conversation when these come up.
One of the things that jumped at me when you were talking about when we first talked about this, and you talked about how you're accelerating opportunities and you love to promote people, and you'll promote people kind of, they don't have to prove to you that they already can do the job. They have to demonstrate they have the potential or the capability, and then you'll put them there and support them into growing into this new portfolio of opportunity or skills. And what jumped at me is that, I hear so often people that are, it's usually in the generational debate. I just was with a group a few weeks ago doing a workshop with some small business leaders, and people love to blame everything on the young employees, right? They don't have the work ethic. They want to be promoted right away, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I think all of that is nonsense. I said, I've seen the alternative or whatever. And what it seems to me is that you're kind of leaning into that. You're rather than saying you shouldn't expect to get promoted right away. We're like, hey, listen, if you're able to demonstrate that you're capable, we will give you the opportunities to prove it. I'm guessing, though, that there are some pretty clear processes or conversations in place. And this is what I'm really curious to hear from you. How do you manage that? I'm guessing you're going out and attracting pretty ambitious, talented, early career people, right? They come in the door, they're hungry for promotion, and they expect that there's going to be that. How do you manage that expectation and make sure they understand that it's connected to contribution, or that there's if you demonstrate that you are capable or that you have that potential and you're willing to put the effort in, then we'll give you that opportunity. What does that look like? How do you manage those expectations so it doesn't backfire?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jason. Not sure we're proactively managing that. I think that we just have a high accountability culture, particularly earlier in the career phase. And so, we'll make the call the other way too. It's not, this is not all fun and games, right? And so I just think the fact that we're very real about giving people that are coming in, and doing well, if we're putting, they've got wind in their sails and we're keeping it going. And then people that are struggling, if we can't turn it around through coaching, they're not going to make it. So we're not for everybody, that's for sure. Not everyone loves that level of accountability. Honestly, that's some people like to kind of hide. It's hard to hide, and so I think that's part of it. We have we do have a decent number of titles, like levels, which I think helps. It's not like the military with like 50 job grades and levels, but we also didn't go the route of like, oh, we only have 4 broad bands, and like that just feels like you're never going to get promoted because it's these
Sure.
right. So we have enough where we feel like we can appropriately move people up that are doing well with a new title authentically. But I do think there is some of that expectation for sure. I mean, and then with there is something generational there as well. We're just generally able to meet it, but if we don't, it's for good reason. Like we
Yeah.
feel good about that decision and are willing to deal with the consequences.
Well, it sounds like there's some real clarity around how decisions are made, about the process. Like they can, that transparency that you've referenced several times, I think probably helps an awful lot, right? Because they get to see people, why people are being promoted and what they're being promoted to, and the kinds of things that get you promoted versus, and that is rooted in accountability and delivering results. I suspect that probably helps a lot, because I think that's where a lot of the frustration and angst comes from, is that the promotional process in too many organizations is smoke and mirrors. At least it feels like it's
Right.
very opaque, and people don't really understand how decisions are made. And so therefore it feels like you're just waiting to be chosen. And that is the opposite of what I think someone that's really wanting to advance career is looking for. They want to just know what the path is.
I agree. And we can still do a better job, I think, laying that out for our earlier career team members. I think they don't know how much transparency there is in the process, like behind the scenes. Until you're a lead manager yourself and you're recommending one of your team members, and then you see how all the machinery works. Like, oh wow, a lot of people, a lot of eyes on this one. You wouldn't necessarily know that, but I do think the putting it right there in bright lights and saying, Emily in her expanded role is going to be doing this, this, and this, that helps with avoid the smoke and mirrors, because that's,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, someone can look at that and go like, that's not really that much more. I don't think for the most part that's the case. It's usually pretty understandable that this is a bigger role for Emily and good for her. So I think that's, instead of just saying Emily is now, been promoted to director or whatever, and, on to the next thing, when you show what all that work is going to be, it brings it to life, I think, a little bit more. And I do want to go back to when we were talking about the interviews. Part of why I think we're comfortable and more companies should be comfortable with promoting on the front end, not making the person prove themselves for months and months and then giving them finally the title, is this person pretty well, right? Think about the decisions you make in a 45-minute interview, and not just early talent, even mid-career or even senior people. You put them through an interview process and you put all this trust in your decision making, your assessment ability, which most people are not great at, and you put them in these decent roles, decent sized roles, or whether it's an early career role, doesn't matter. Based on this, I don't want to say flimsy. Obviously, you hope you're getting some good answers in your interviews, but versus the track record, even if it's just been 6 months or 12 months, whatever, you've been living with this person at work, you see their work, you should be much more confident promoting somebody proactively as a result of that.
Yeah. That is, I've always, and this was true early in my career. Like I moved a whole bunch of times from company to company early in my career because it seemed like a new company always valued me at a higher level than the company I was at. Like something about they were betting on my potential was worth more than my actual performance, I guess. And I think
Right.
that still happens in too many places. We don't bet on the known, right? And we're betting on the unknown, which just seems like a really weird high
Right.
risk way to do talent. So that's a really great point. Well, I love this, and I think it's really helpful to challenge people to think about, particularly now where I think we're increasingly seeing, especially with earlier career people, which I don't think this is a new thing. They're saying it's generational, but I think it's more early career, that career development opportunity is an incredibly powerful and important driver of overall engagement and satisfaction and retention. And it's fun to hear about how you're putting that into actual practice and really committing to that and giving people, betting on people's potential and creating that opportunity for them. Because I think so often people are just waiting for that invitation.
Right.
And I would say the other thing is you're offering support, that 90-day check-in and that support. I think a lot of times there are organizations that'll promote you ahead of your proven competence necessarily in a new job, but they kind of just throw you in the deep end of the pool and hope you're going to swim, as opposed to staying with you and making sure you have the training and development and clarity of expectations that you need.
Yep. Yep. No, I agree. I love that 90-day check-in. And look, we certainly have some work to do on, better role clarity. I read a survey, I think it was last year, that 60 something percent of US workers say they don't understand what's expected of them at work. It was more than 50, right? And so we're not immune from that completely. And from a formal training perspective, that's one of the things we actually scored a little bit lower on. But people learn by doing. And I think, we have a lot of leaders who, this is going to sound kind of funny, but they haven't forgotten how smart they were at 25 or 26, and someone took a chance on them. And that's how, I mean, my first HR business partner role, I was 24, and the executive I was supporting was a 1,000-person merger transition team that was being put together for a merger to bank sizes to equal. I was born the day he joined the bank. Like literally, his hire date was my actual birth date. So I never brought that up. He probably thought I was like 30 or so. So, but just I learned, someone took a chance on me there. In hindsight, I think they were kind of crazy, but I did the little fake it till you make thing a little bit. Got found people I can get have my questions answered. So we haven't. I feel like we have a lot of leaders that remember how capable they were on the way up, and so we're willing to take that chance on somebody, which has been cool.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely. Well, let's do a couple of other quick check-in questions here as we land the plane,
Sure.
Mike. The first one is, what is a big challenge or obstacle you're wrestling at work, or wrestling with at work right now?
I'd say the biggest one organizationally is we're like a 15, 20-year-old startup. There's still some startup vibes, which can be very fun and entertaining on one hand, but from a getting alignment to goals and corporate goals and kind of making sure we're all rowing the boat at the same cadence, the same speed, we need to accelerate our transition to a more mature company. We want to hang on to the spirit. We want to hang on to the energy of a startup, but you can't run a larger company and grow and scale and keep on doing that. And so that is, we have a number of executives that worked at GE and they had that larger company experience, but there's a lot of others that came over when this company was born. They were much younger in their career and hadn't really experienced the larger. So they've only experienced it. We have a lot of people that have only experienced this in leadership roles. So we've been driving the org transformation I mentioned earlier, the reorganization. We have 8 clear kind of lines. We call them pillars. That was from 4. So we have more accountability at the executive level. We've got some really meaningful operating pillar, that's what we call them, metrics kind of that we're achieving. It's when show up for work each day. There's no ambiguity about like what we're trying to accomplish and how we're going to prove that we've accomplished this thing. And we've gotten much better at having kind of at the leadership level, all the way down to most people who manage people having individual KPIs. So nothing new under the sun on this one, Jason. I know a lot of companies do this, but we've put a lot of energy into the right metrics. We're still fine tuning because we're kind of early in the journey, but I've already seen the clarity that that's helping bring in terms of the purpose. I mean, even for my global business operations team, we do a survey when they do work for a group. They kind of that sent them work. We send them a survey and ask about speed, quality, and accuracy of the work. And the leaders of those 2 team leaders that I have that run those teams, they know that their KPI is kind of an aggregate of the scores, and so they know if their team members are scoring high on speed, accuracy, and quality, that they're doing a good job, and that means the leaders are doing it right. So just that whole alignment, which again, nothing new here, but we're trying to drive more accountability there and more clarity. But just that cultural shift from startup mindset to a more mature company, because we're trying to hockey stick it growth wise, and
Sure.
that's not easy to do. And we're gonna do some leadership development. There's gonna be some investment in getting kind of our extended leadership team together and talking a little bit about kind of what got you there, what got you here won't get you there, like what needs to change to kind of live into this ambitious future that we're planning for ourselves. So I'd say that's the corporate. And then for me, specifically within the HR team, is really helping our HR business partner transition from a little bit more tactical to more strategic. A lot of companies are on that journey.
Sure.
I was raised in the Bank of America HR model, which is a very progressive HR model. Great company to learn HR in. And it's high business acumen, high influence. You don't have to earn your seat at the table. It is given. It's like yours to lose. So there's an expectation that you are a business leader first, a business thinker first, and an HR person second.
Mm.
So I'm helping my team kind of translate and think that way so that we could have a bigger impact on the overall transformation of the company. So that's more of my personal challenge and they know it. They're probably listening to this podcast, so not saying anything I wouldn't say
Yeah.
in front of them. But but the corporate one we're at a pretty pivotal time in our company history, and it's exciting to be part of that.
Sounds like great, important work. So I'll be excited to follow your progress. Last question, or last big question. I have one small question for you after this, but last big question is one I ask everyone, and it's about the future. And this is sort of what your sort of hopeful vision of the future is. So when you think about work in 5 years from now, what is one thing you hope will be different about work broadly or generally than it is today?
Two things. One is I would like us to be more relationship oriented, more heads up versus heads down. We live in this heads down. We walk around with our phone in front of us. It's easy just to be heads down all the time. As a matter of fact, I'm based in Charlotte. It's lovely today. I ate my lunch outside and I brought my phone with me and I was like, you know what? I'm outside. I literally flipped it down. I'm like, I'm going to be in relationship with nature for my lunch, versus going back to, so I used to think that just sort of humanity was on this natural evolution towards enlightenment. As we got deeper and deeper into the years, people became more enlightened. And I think what we're seeing in the world is that's not true. It's not going to happen naturally. It has to happen with intentionality. So, it's people are being more split apart. And I would love to see that we focus more on relationships at work. We talk about it a lot in our company. Relationships matter. They really do. And particularly as a global company, finding ways to make sure that people feel connected. So I'd say that's one. The other is just that we adapt AI in a way not just humane, but we are excited about it. I'm excited about AI. Our companies, we are all in on AI from a product perspective and from an internal how the way work gets done perspective. So I am hopeful in 5 years that companies find a way to help train their employees, their team members, and that we're using AI in a way that's going to make our jobs more awesome and not more obsolete. And so I don't know if the two go together. There's probably some connection you can make there between relationships and AI, but hopeful for both of those.
Got it. No, I think you're right. I think those two are interrelated if we have the intention to seize the opportunity. Right? It will create an opportunity for sure. Awesome. Well, as we wrap up, I said one quick question, and my quick question for you is kind of a check out question. So, Mike, in one word, how are you feeling as we wrap up our conversation today?
I would say fortunate, related to just this experience with this podcast and with you. I could have been sitting 3 seats away from you when we did that exercise, which I believe was we had a pitch why elephants should have parachutes. I believe that was our prompt, and then go back and forth on that one, which was very fun. So I felt fortunate to be part of that session, hear your talk, and then end up sitting next to you. So that landed me here today. So I'm feeling very fortunate right now.
Excellent. For me, my one word is believe. And I think it's in context of believing in the potential of young people, believing that they are motivated by the same things that most of us are. They just have grown up a little bit differently and have a different context. And so give them the opportunity that we had. They just are going to go at it differently. So that this has been an inspiring conversation. I hope that many people can sort of come away from this, Mike, with some inspiration or some sparks or some nuggets to maybe rethink their relationship with what should happen around development or accessibility to development or the rate of development and promotion, particularly for some of the younger people in their workforce. So thank you for that gift. I hope that people will take advantage of that. And Mike, I really appreciate you being here. It's been a great conversation. If someone wants to connect with you, what's the best place to find you?
It's got to be LinkedIn. Just it's Michael Ferone is my profile name on LinkedIn. And so, yeah, hit me up. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to connect with you. If you've got questions about what we talked about, or I just want to be connected, I would welcome that, and that'd be great.
Or if you just want to do a quick improv exercise, Mike is very creative and very willing to lean into it, I found. So he might be game for that. But we'll put your the link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes so people can find that and connect to you. It's been a delight, Mike. I really appreciate you being here. And as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for making time. And I hope that you can take some insights or inspiration from Mike's example and what they are doing around creating a culture of opportunity and carry those back into your workplace and start experimenting and trying some new things to really make a difference. Access development is incredibly powerful right now, and people are craving that. So lean into it, go try some things, and please remember to check in with those people in your life that matter the most to you. Maybe the most important thing that you could do today. Till next time.